Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 78, The Shredder, as requested by our president-level patron, Brian. This is a fun one. It's certainly a character that I definitely appreciate, but I also think it's safe to say that much like the Tick from several episodes ago, that the vast majority of our audience is familiar with the character after their later iterations and not the original comics. I'm not saying some of our fans maybe haven't read the original Mirage comics, but I am willing to bet a substantial sum of money that your introduction to the Shredder from Ninja Turtles is largely based on your age. So I'm going to say if you are an elder millennial, as are Doc and I and Brian, you were probably all introduced to the Shredder through the cartoon, maybe or the live action movies. And then maybe if you're a little younger than that, maybe some of the later episodes of that cartoon, or maybe even the 2003 version. And then if you are that young, then maybe you were introduced to him through the Michael Bay, Megan Fox type movies. And I'm going to go out on a limb, by the way, and this is going to be a hot take. Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, not that bad. For what it is fan service for those of us of a certain age. And it is bright, it is dumb, it is colorful, and I don't have a problem with it. Tyler Perry has a blast in it. I think that's probably the first time anybody's ever said that sentence in the history of the English language.
Well, no. I will disagree in the sense that I think Tyler Perry has a blast with everything he does. It's the fact that other people don't see it that way.
Fair. Okay. I can respect that then. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was dumb, colorful, and I thought it was certainly a waste of Stephen Amell's time. And that was, I don't know who he was, but that was not Casey Jones. But everybody else it was what it was. You know, I didn't have that much of an issue with it, but I digress. So as always, we start off with our little bit of housekeeping. First off, congratulations to Seth. He's one of our big super fans. He's our meme master over in our Facebook group. Side note, you should totally join our Facebook group. He had a daughter recently, Arwen Bellatrix. A lot of readers in that family. I'll just put it that way. Clearly, if you're naming your daughter Arwen Bellatrix, you are a fan of literature and pop culture. So congratulations to Seth, and mother and daughter are all resting well, I hope. Our weekly shout out is to Gutting the Sacred Cow. Comedians Kevin Goatee and Kevin Israel rip apart popular movies. And one of the reasons why I'm plugging this show is because Kevin is my old boss. Not just that, but also it's a very funny show. So they rip apart a popular movie. It has to be either critically acclaimed or very financially successful or really fondly remembered. And the whole thing is that they really take the piss out of these movies. So if you are in the mood for hot takes, then this is definitely the show for you. It's guttingthesacredcow.com is the show. And last, I want to mention that we had referenced, I believe in our last episode or maybe the one before that, about Podchaser and donating money to Meals on Wheels and COVID-19 relief for their Reviews for Good. Well, they have extended that to the end of the month of April. So if you go to podchaser.com and you find our show and you leave us a review, Podchaser will donate 25 cents to the relief fund. And if we respond, which we absolutely will, they will double that. So the money goes towards a good cause. And I also want to give a shout out and a thank you to Libsyn, who is our distributor, and they are also offering some financial support and backing the donations to Meals on Wheels. So kudos to Libsyn, kudos to Podchaser, and you should definitely go on Podchaser. It's basically the IMDb of podcasts, or at least it is trying to be, and they've made a huge amount of leaps and bounds in the short time span that they have been up and running. So, and by the way, since it's now live, I think we mentioned it last episode, but it is now live. You can go to the Guardians MH podcast. Doc and I were both guests on a recent episode, and we got to talk to those guys, chatting all things Mega Man, as well as our upcoming collaboration with the Mental Health Avengers. So we'll be discussing that a little bit momentarily. All right, so now that we got the housekeeping out of the way, let's dive into Shredder, a.k.a. Oroku Saki. He was created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, May of 1984, the original first 40-page black and white comic. So, as we alluded to, most folks are familiar with Shredder in one of his many other iterations, but in the original Mirage comics, which I might add, by the way, were intended to be a huge spoof on Frank Miller, particularly Frank Miller's run on Daredevil, the whole idea of the Foot Clan instead of the Hand, and Splinter instead of Stick, and so on and so forth, the grittiness. The whole thing was supposed to be taking the piss out of Frank Miller, and 35 years later, it is still going. And they managed to tap into some vein. So kudos to Eastman and Laird for that. But in the original Mirage comics, Hamato Yoshi and Oroku Nagi were rivals for the love of a woman, Tang Shen, in Japan. And Hamato Yoshi fought Oroku Nagi over Tang Shen. Yoshi killed Nagi and then fled with Tang Shen to America. Nagi's younger brother, Oroku Saki, took it upon himself to seek revenge. He joined the Foot Clan, a group of ninja assassins, and worked his way through the ranks to take over the New York branch of the Foot Clan. So, again, this is somewhat different from the way that everybody else seems to think of the Shredder as the top. In the comics, he was a lieutenant at best, because he was in charge of the New York branch, but he was still not head of the Foot Clan proper. Right. So he comes to America, he kills Hamato Yoshi and Tang Shen, and then he leads the Foot Clan as they take over the New York underworld. So I'm not going to get into the whole origin of the Ninja Turtles, because
if you don't know that,
yeah, if you don't know the Ninja Turtles, mutated by ooze, so is the rat. And now, again, depending on the version of the adaptation that you're seeing, Splinter is either Hamato Yoshi himself or he's Hamato Yoshi's pet. In this comic, in the original comics, he is Hamato Yoshi's pet. I think in the cartoon, he was Hamato Yoshi.
Correct.
But in this version and the live action, the original live action version, he was Hamato Yoshi's pet, who would watch his master and study ninjutsu and so on and so forth. So Shredder battles the turtles trained by Splinter, the rat formerly owned by Hamato Yoshi. He doesn't know about the connection to Hamato Yoshi until later on, but he's battling the turtles and he ends up being stabbed by Leonardo through the chest, and they offer him the chance to commit seppuku, ritualistic suicide. They say, here, you can do the honorable thing and kill yourself. We're not going to kill you. He insteads to detonate a thermite grenade and kill everybody on the rooftop. Donatello knocks him off the building and he explodes and dies. So in the very first issue of Ninja Turtles, Shredder dies. He's killed. That's it.
Yep.
And we're done. But not exactly, because comics. And I'll get to that at the end of the show. So Shredder gets resurrected by the Foot Clan using worms, because comics. And he once again fights the turtles. And here he is decapitated and his body gets burned. So that is the original run on the Mirage comics as created by the creators of the Ninja Turtles. And I think it was Kevin Eastman who said that he never intended for Shredder to be this recurring adversary, for the Turtles. So that's the original Mirage comics. Now, if you go back to our Casey Jones episode, you know that the Turtles have had a couple of iterations in the comics, not all of which are canonical. And depending on the publisher, the stories change. So the Archie Comics run of the Turtle comics, the Shredder is much more in line with the animated version where he is the recurring enemy of the Turtles. And his characterization is he's the head of the Foot Clan. He and Krang are trying to defeat the Turtles for reasons, whatever. And he's cunning, but always manages to lose. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So the Archie Comics version of Shredder is much more in line with the animated version. Then the IDW Comics version, Orokusaki was the leader of the Foot Clan in feudal Japan, so going back some 300 years. And then he stole ooze from an Utrom, later revealed to be Krang, that preserved his body until he was resurrected by a descendant, Oroku Karai, some 300 years later. And Karai, if that name sounds familiar, you recognize it as Shredder's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
In some versions biological, in some versions adopted. But Karai is widely known to be, she is generally considered to have a strong association, shall we say, with the Shredder. And so here he battles a similarly resurrected Hamato Yoshi, who is Splinter in this version. They are one and the same. And he dies by Splinter's hand. So again, this is something we addressed when we talked about Casey Jones, and I'm assuming when we cover Raphael in a few episodes, because that's one of Ruby's future picks. So we'll be getting to Raph. We will also delve into the various differences and discrepancies between the characterizations of the Ninja Turtle characters. And this is, again, because of the shifting publishers that write and create these comics. So it's a little difficult to follow along with. I apologize if you're confused. We're going to try and simplify it a little bit when we get into the issues momentarily, but just know that the version of Shredder that you love and that you are familiar with is no less valid than any other version, because these characters ultimately become archetypal. And so I'm not going to say that any one version is more or less valid than another, unless you're talking Next Mutation, in which case you can just kiss off there, because nobody considers that real. But everything else, even and that also even includes the version where he is trying to steal all of the music in the world because he hates music, and that was in the Coming Out of Our Shells concert pay-per-view from like 1990 or 91, which I did see at a friend's house.
You are ridiculous. You know that.
I don't deny that at all. But hey, I was Michelangelo for Halloween one year. I mean, Donnie has always been my favorite turtle. But I mean, you can't go wrong with the Ninja Turtles. Everybody loves them. And if you don't, I don't want to know you as a person. So.
All right. No pressure there.
No, none whatsoever. So the issues, this is, as I said, this is a little difficult because of the various discrepancies. But one thing that all iterations of Shredder have in common is revenge against Hamato Yoshi. No matter what version you're looking at, they all generally stem, aside from the 2003 version where Shredder is really an Utrom in a robotic body, and even then they still managed to work in the Hamato Yoshi storyline somehow.
Mm-hmm.
The notion that Shredder, Orokusaki, is seeking revenge against Hamato Yoshi for the death of his brother. And this bleeds into attacks on all of the turtles because they are trained by Splinter, and thus they have that connection to Hamato Yoshi. So what it ultimately comes down to is to Shredder, they are an extension of Hamato Yoshi and therefore must be eliminated. So Doc, I guess let's start with the revenge thing.
Yeah.
It's a primal instinct, basically. His brother is killed in the original story, so he needs to make sure that his brother is avenged. There's a cultural part to this as well that I'm not going to really deep dive into, partly because I'm a little ignorant of it and I don't want to give it short shrift, but also because I don't think it would do it justice for the fact that if you have a loved one that dies and you feel like there was some level of unfairness in the circumstance, then you're going to do everything you can to figure out how to quote unquote make it right. So no, typically we don't have a situation where we say our family member was killed and so we have to find out who killed them and kill them back. But to put it in a situation that most people understand on a regular basis, and I'll go ahead and do it in the medical field, because when a doctor faces a malpractice lawsuit, it's usually not considered a personal thing, even if the doctor themselves considers it personal. And yet, it's often due to the idea, let's say that someone was in surgery and they died. Whether it was a matter of an accident in the surgery itself or complications that were unavoidable and the patient knew about it and the family was made aware, the fact is a negative event happened. And as humans, we want things to remain in a certain structure, especially when we think it was something that could have been avoided or something that didn't have to be in that situation in the first place. And we have this fantasy of undoing. So no, we're not in comics. We can't turn back time and just, rearrange things, but we can get the sense that everything was done within our own personal abilities to move forward in a way that we are honoring that person's suffering or honoring that person's death. This is really clear with Shredder. He doesn't mince words about it, and he gets it done in multiple iterations when it comes to dealing with Hamato Yoshi. So from that standpoint, I think everybody can relate to the idea of if you did something wrong to me, I will go ahead and just make sure that you experience a similar pain. Misery loves company. And so we could leave it at that, but you already hinted at it. What if that emotion doesn't go away? We don't have an on-off switch, especially if it's something that you've been doing your whole life. Shredder turned himself into a killer. He's steeped in that culture. So from that standpoint, he still has this emotional barrier that he can't break through. And in a very perverse way, when you have other remnants of that same line, so if you want to say that Splinter is the former pet and now is this mutated rat, and all of these turtles that were trained under the same style of Hamato Yoshi, whether it's Yoshi himself or not, you don't just want that one person gone. You want their entire, and I know, Anthony, you'll appreciate this, you want their legacy to be completely eliminated. So that's where Shredder comes from with this. He takes it beyond revenge against a person. He wants elimination of a legacy. So that's something that you can, in theory, carry on for the rest of your life. And historically, we have examples of that. The Hatfields and McCoys is something that everyone has heard of. And I'm not making this up, some of the family members didn't even remember why they were fighting to begin with. It was just the fact that that's what they were doing. So these sorts of things can end up taking a life of their own. Obviously, if you're talking with the one person, with Shredder, it's going to stay that way. It's going to stick with him as long as he exists in one form or another. But even with the Turtles trying to do right, they're trying to do justice, they are fighting Shredder as an enemy because he's doing bad in the world. Shredder is fighting them not because he thinks that they're horrible. Well, I take that back. In the cartoons especially, he thinks they're horrible. But that's something that developed over time. And it was more along the lines of, you are tied too close to the one thing that potentially destroyed any other path I had in life at an early age. And if that's destroyed for me, then it has to be destroyed for anyone that comes close to it. In other words, I would be very scared for anyone that has the name Yoshi in their bloodline, because I think he would go ahead and continue to attack any person that he would come across in his life. That may be
so
just
he's killing green dinosaurs?
I was waiting for it. Or he's killing, former WWE wrestlers like Yoshi Tatsu. I don't know. But I do think that he would be that vindictive. It is something that he has fostered for his entire adult life. He knows no other way to function. And that type of rage fuels him. It's what he lives for, and what he died for, and what he gets resurrected for. So if you have that level of conviction for something it's scary to say it, but if you have that type of conviction for that level of hatred, it's amazing how far that can carry you in life. It's an incredible, painful way to go through life, but it is sustainable. Can't deny that.
Take a deep breath, because you don't have another left coming back, like I'm avenging my brother's death. So Shredder is Cool G Rap then?
Wow. I'll
light it up for the Symphony.
Much respect, man. Much respect.
You're supposed to keep going to the record stop. Throw some old school hip hop there. So we just got done discussing how much he hates the Turtles because of who they are and what they represent. But he begrudgingly respects Leonardo as a leader or a rival in battle. And that's not something you see too much in the original Mirage, but it is in some of the other iterations of the comics, and also to some extent some of the other adaptations. Talk about that a little bit, and how that dichotomy still manages to exist within his brain, that he hates the Turtles, but he begrudgingly respects Leonardo.
So you know the term frenemy, right?
I have a few of them.
So the idea is that this can develop on both sides of the spectrum. So in other words, you can have someone that was very close to you in a positive way, but for one reason or another, either a falling out or just circumstances that lead to you having to be opponents in one realm of your life. It doesn't have to be every realm. You end up in a situation where there's some tension. And the other way, which is much more the Shredder Leonardo situation, is when you are definitely opponents, you're definitely on the opposite sides of each other, and yet because of a mutual experience, usually competition, you end up admiring the traits of the other person in one way or another. And you've already said it, begrudgingly. This is not something that is done in the way that you fawn over the person. You are not usually trying to even emulate them. You're not trying to say that they are good people even. You're just pointing out that there is some benefit to this experience that we are having together. And I don't know why, and I don't know if it's supposed to continue like this, but doggone it, while it's going on, I'm actually getting some enjoyment out of it. And so you end up in this strange realm where you have laughter sometimes or shared inside jokes and whatnot. And yet still, when someone asks you what's your goal, it's, I'm going to destroy them.
I need to humiliate them or whatever. In this case, obviously, in the comics or in the shows, it's no. I need to beat them in battle, or especially with Shredder, I need to kill them. But the idea that both of those things can live in this tense equilibrium, it's fascinating because it's one of the few times where I think many people in our audience may not experience that. In other words, you have people you like, you have people you don't like, and neither the twain shall meet. But there really does exist this middle ground. Anthony, you said you have a few. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily have that myself. Off the top of my head, I don't think I would classify anybody that way, really.
I mean, I joke. I joke, of course. I think the closest I would have to a frenemy, if it could even be said that I have one, and you know him, is Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think he's a frenemy. I think it's just our friendship is based on mutual ball busting. And as we've grown and matured, and I mean, God, I haven't seen him in eons. So it's not a situation where there's that tension anymore. But even when we were consistently hanging out together, there was never any mean-spiritedness behind it. It was just, that was the nature of our relationship, was I'm going to rip you a new one, and he was going to do the same to me. But at the end of it, if anybody else tried to step in and, fight him or do anything, I was going to back him up, because I was like, hey, I can say what I want about him. I don't know who you are. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this type of thing is something that we see a lot in sports. But I'm also going to bring about, because I don't want to make it sound like this is all sunshine and rainbows. I think, and this is purely speculation on my part, because I do not know these people, but do you remember the Richie Incognito situation in the NFL?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's an example, because a lot of the texts were leaked with him and Martin, and the back and forth banter reminded me of this situation where, on one hand, Incognito viewed it, I think, as just like good-natured hazing, ball busting, whatever you want to call it. And meanwhile, Jonathan Martin basically said, like, dude, you're a bully to me, and I'm hating this, and it's actually causing me damage. So if the dynamic is not at a good equilibrium, then yeah, it can be painful. So,
well, I think that's exactly what it is. There has to be an equal give and take. If it's one-sided, then you're going to end up with a power imbalance, and then the person on the receiving end is going to feel like a victim, and they're going to rightfully feel bullied. With my friend Kevin and I, it was very much a give and take situation. We each gave as good as we got. So there was never any need for, I never felt bullied, and I think I can speak for him and say that he never felt bullied. It was just how it was. Now, there may have been one or two times where I seriously wanted to whip his ass because he took it over the line a little bit, but never so much so that it was completely equilibrium. It was just, he would needle, and then go like just that one little bit too far. And if I'm saying he took it too far, it's pretty far out there, because my leash is miles long for that sort of stuff. But
yeah,
with the Richie Incognito, Jonathan Martin situation, I think, like you said, there was an imbalance there, because Richie Incognito, who we later found, or at least I don't think he's the sharpest tool in the shed. And so I don't think that he had much thought or consideration for his words beyond that. Whereas Jonathan Martin said, listen, I'm taking this stuff seriously, and Richie Incognito didn't take that well.
Yeah.
So I do think there has to be an equilibrium. But bringing it back to Shredder Leonardo, I think Shredder certainly views, I mean, he definitely knows that the Turtles are physically capable. He does, I think, begrudgingly respect, even though he hates Hamato Yoshi and everything that he stood for, he knows that Hamato Yoshi was an excellent martial artist, and that if Splinter is teaching them in the style that Hamato Yoshi fought in, and that he has seen firsthand how Splinter fights and how the turtles fight, that he goes, you're good. I don't have to like you, but I know that you know what you're doing. You know, I had a coworker. I couldn't stand her personally, but she's retired. I'm not speaking about her as though she's no longer with us. She retired. I couldn't stand her on a personal level, but she was damn good at her job. And so I knew that I limited my interactions with her, but I knew if I gave her something to do, that it would get done before I even needed it, because that's how efficient she was. So it's that same situation. I think we all kind of understand that notion. She's another person I guess you could call a frenemy for me. I don't have that many, I swear. But I think we all understand that notion of, you may not like them, but you acknowledge that they do a good job, you know. And even as fans, you reference sports, I think even fans can understand that even somebody who plays for a rival team, you can still acknowledge that they're good at what they do. As I'm a Red Sox fan, I hate the Yankees, absolutely abhor them, but that late 90s, early 2000s group of Jeter, Jorge, Bernie, Mo, etc., Andy Pettit, all those guys, I respect them because they were damn good ball players.
Yeah. And you know what? That's actually a great point. That type of rivalry, I still remember this. I remember you texted me on our dumb phones or flip phones, whatever, when the Red Sox got their first victory, came back. And I remember saying, I texted you back, I said to you, this is potentially one of the most important nights in Red Sox history. For me, it's
just another Tuesday.
Yeah.
And Bison.
Well, it was a Wednesday night because that's what I specifically texted back. But yes, that was it. And that was my feeble attempt at the time. I didn't realize it at the time. I figured, man, that's going to shut them up as soon as they win the next game. And the Red Sox end up winning and actually get a championship, which I, for some overly hubris-laden reason, thought would not happen, at least not in my lifetime. I couldn't believe it. But that goes right back. You just mentioned that respect level. It was just an amazing thing to unfortunately witness. So, doggone it. The idea of, like we said, this equilibrium, it's so vital to those types of relationships, because without it, I think life is just less entertaining. as long as it's healthy. It's got to be healthy. I'm not talking about this, like Shredder trying to kill them and all that stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying the idea that it's true. We're not going to get along with everybody's personality, or there are going to be circumstances that make sure that we are going to be on opposite sides of a topic. That doesn't mean that you can't still enjoy the interactions or be productive with other people, which I think we're really coming to learn these past few weeks.
Absolutely. No argument here. And the longer this goes on, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. So the last topic, the last issue for Shredder, and again, this is more for some of his non-comic iterations, particularly the animated version, the original animated version. I'm a little less, I have some passing familiarity with the 2003 version. I've never seen any of the other cartoons, so I can't honestly speak to them. But the idea of cognitive dissonance and the fact that Shredder has an intolerance for failure from his subordinates, from Bebop and Rocksteady, from Baxter Stockman, from any of the other mutated individuals that he works with, Krang to some extent. So he has a very short fuse and an absolute intolerance for failure. but he fails all the time. And he never puts it together. He never understands that there's a common thread amongst all of his failures, and it's not anybody else. It's the guy in the mirror. That is something that I think we'll definitely can address in some of the out-of-universe treatment options, but just the idea that you don't understand that everything around you is failing, but you're blaming everybody else, and you won't accept failure from anybody else, but you can't accept it but you refuse to acknowledge it in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Once again, because I'll admit I'm on a sports kick. There's a commercial featuring Michael Jordan with Nike, and he points out, I failed over and over and over again, and that's why I succeed. That's not what we're talking about here. Because what that implies is there's a certain level of dedication, a certain level of effort. I'm trying not to invoke the practice thing that I know you want to say, because that's what we're talking about. But there's a difference between dedication to your craft and dedication to the critique. Shredder doesn't do either one very well, both for others and for himself. In other words, if you go on YouTube, you can probably find a compilation of clips from the original cartoon of him just putting out these one-line insults to every person that he comes across. And I'm not talking about the Turtles. I'm not talking about Splinter. I'm talking about the people that in theory he's supposed to be working with, the people that are supposed to be listening to his orders, all of it. He just constantly insults them. He doesn't tell them how to improve. He doesn't tell them what they did well so that they could build off it. Never. He just lays out insult after insult after insult nonstop. And then he wonders why they aren't getting anything right or why they're not getting better. Think about that for yourself. And I'm going to be honest, it's unfortunate that some people do go through this. If you have a parent that just berates you constantly and never gives you any of the other positive feedback, that can be damaging. If you have a teacher, if you have a coach, if you have a boss, coworker, and that's all they do. I'm not talking about people that have loud mouths and are emotional or show things in a way, but then give the other information that may be beneficial to you. I'm talking about they just have that one note in your ear, dragging you and pushing you into the mud. That doesn't benefit anybody. And you're not going to get results from that person. But then that says something about the style that person expects as a leader. So what do they do to themselves? For the most part, in my experience, those same people actually do have that type of view of themselves, which is something that they still would have to work on. They would have to learn not to be as hard on themselves. But Shredder has a much different dynamic, as you already pointed to. He actually just doesn't see it. He's oblivious to it. So he hasn't developed that part of his skill set to recognize in himself. He doesn't give himself his own score sheet. And there may be some speculation about that because in every iteration, like you said in the original comic, maybe he wasn't the head of the entire Foot Clan, but he certainly was a pretty big deal in it. And every other iteration, he is the leader of the Foot Clan, and he has the type of allies, including, aliens from another dimension, mutants that he himself made sure were created, all of these things. That tells you, though, that he has accomplished a lot. And so from that standpoint, he's had so much success over so much time that he just got to the point where it's obvious that anytime something goes wrong, it cannot be his fault. He's using his own evidence. He basically wrote the book and then closed it well before anybody should. In other words, he knew enough about himself that he felt like there was nothing else to iterate on, which is wrong. And so now he's stuck in this one chapter of that book where he is the top dog that does everything right and never once looked to write another sentence to say, but now things have changed. And he never learned how to handle it. He never learned how to handle that type of change. And so what do you do if you've had something that was successful for so long? Because let's think about it. He's an adult that managed to, at least in one form or another, kill someone that he felt did his family wrong and is now the leader of a bunch of things. All right, cool. But now you found an enemy that doesn't care. They're not looking at your old successes. It doesn't matter to them. And actually, that is a good point in terms of just culture with the turtles. Each iteration, aside from the very first one, shows that because they are the teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they have a bit of a rebellious streak. They have a bit of unconventional style to them that is going to throw off more traditionalists. So, does he ever think to himself, well, he knows he needs an army, but he didn't think to himself, well, what if I go ahead and try and understand why they're so unorthodox? Or what did someone like Hamato Yoshi or Hamato Yoshi's pet, what did he learn new and how did he adapt to these people? No, he doesn't think about that. My way or the highway is the best way. And anything else is misery. So we go back to the whole misery loves company. Well, he's done an excellent job. He has created Misery Inc. in the Foot Clan.
Interesting. Yeah. I was, by the way, I did find, while you were talking, I did find a video, Shredder Insults A to Z. So I will post that in the show notes. I will share that and maybe.
Yeah, because that was speculation on my part, but I just knowing YouTube, like I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's A to Z of Shredder's insults in high pitch. So Shredder's many jabs at Krang. Cool. So we're going to take a break, plug a couple shows, and then we get back. We'll get into treatment. So stay tuned.
Greetings and salutations. This is Cage's Kiss, the ultimate Cage cast, where we discuss the movies and life of the national treasure, Nick Cage.
There are three of us here, and I can't help but notice that none of us are Nicolas Cage. Did nobody call him?
What? A Cage cast with no Nick Cage?
No, instead of being Nicolas Cage, we're three Nicolas Cage experts, which is the next best thing.
I don't think we should admit to being experts.
Too late.
We are not experts at anything. We are not life coaches, and we are not in any way, shape, or form qualified to give you suggestions on life choices.
But Nick Cage is, and he's made hundreds of life choices.
Seriously, I cannot stress enough just how much you should not take our advice.
But we're experts.
No, seriously, we're not experts.
Yes, but we will be reviewing his first acting gig as Nicholas Coppola, Best of Times, which features a young and very precious Crispin Glover.
And his work in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
And his work in My Nightmares.
We're experts.
What is the perfect package? Well, it could be anything. Join Chad and Dave as they dive into the Perfect Package podcast. From the perfect first date to the perfect Old West gang.
I knew it was coming. I was like, where's my Hateful Eight pick from him?
Damn right. Of course it's going to be in there.
Each episode, Chad and Dave get 5 picks to create the perfect package. Then, it's up to the listeners to decide who will win each episode of the Perfect Package podcast. So get ready to explore everything from road trips to bank heists.
All right, I felt like running
dark.
Yeah, because I thought this was a normal heist. We might be breaking into like a hospital to steal our heart right now.
The Perfect Package podcast is full of laughs, some healthy competition, and a side of interesting tidbits. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Whitley, and you're listening to Capes on the Couch.
And we're back. So starting with treatment, I don't even know how you'd begin to treat Shredder in universe, but vaya con Dios, let's hear it.
Okay, so basically what I need to do is I need to become a member of the Foot Clan, because that seems to be the only thing that he would respect. The problem is, although I think I have decent coordination when it comes to dancing, I am in no way a martial artist. So I don't know if I can go that route. I basically have
Everybody was kung fu fighting.
I don't know how I would be able to ingratiate myself enough that he would ever even let me in. I almost think I would have to have something where I might actually need to get in touch with someone like April or whoever, where I need something that he would want. It might be like an artifact of something. It might be an interdimensional device. Just something where I would be in a negotiation with him, because, and I'll admit, I'm going by the TV cartoon version, because every other iteration, he doesn't talk. He really doesn't. I mean, he communicates, but he doesn't engage in banter. So that's the only version I think I could pull this off, where it's a negotiation. In other words, if you want this thing, then you actually have to have a session with me, because I need to know I can trust you. And of course, I would know that I can't trust him. But the point is, even if it's just to sweet talk me, I would like him to go through the motions. And we're going to see this in the skit, where, believe it or not, it's a fake it till you make it. In other words, if I can get someone to demonstrate the types of behaviors that could be considered appropriate, then I know that they're also able to rationalize it at some point in their brain. If you can behave that way, you can start to actually put the cognitive energy and emotion behind it at some point. And I'd have to, hate to say this, be a con man. But that's a lot better than just saying, put out my shingle and say, hey, Shredder, come on into my office. I don't think that would ever work.
Okay. There was something I was gonna say earlier, but I was waiting until you were done because I didn't want to interrupt you. And now that it's done, the idea has passed. Oh well, I guess it couldn't have been that important then. So, out of universe then, a real life Shredder such as it is, how would you suggest treating somebody who's got this fixation, who's got this really negative attachment to something that happened in his past? Just like I said, how would you recommend going about treating him?
Right. So depending on what the person's emotional range is overall, dictates just how far I dig. So for a person that has shown that they're trying to struggle with it, in other words, there is this battle that's going on in their head about everything, then I don't mind being a bit more psychoanalytic about it. In other words, going back to childhood, going back to their actual memories of what's happened, all of that, and what would lead to a person picking a direction that is just so destructive. If the person, though, is much more stilted in a Shredder-like way, where they just aren't even aware of what their emotions are behind all of this, then I look at it much more on the very base level symptomatic point of view. In other words, I noticed that when you're talking, you yell a lot. Is that something that makes you feel better? And just point out the very obvious things that anybody could understand. In other words, if you're yelling all the time, there's some discomfort. What can we do to help that discomfort? If you are getting less and less sleep because all you're doing is focusing on your ruminations on your opponent or your business rival or what your neighbor is doing, then that may not be healthy. What can we do to round out your thoughts in other areas so this doesn't take up all of your headspace? Yeah, just real basic things like that. Medication can clearly come into play if the person is at the point where they're truly starting to disrupt everyone's lives. So usually looking in terms of anxiolytics, things to help with anxiety and depression, depending on what's going on, as well as rage if the person is acting out. But it's a well-rounded approach. It's not any one particular thing, even though the person is coming in usually because of one major focus that is just driving everyone else insane. And it seems obvious to everyone around them. And the person may, like I said, if they have the range, say like, look, something's not right about this. I know, but I gotta fix it. But they're not thinking I have to fix it for myself to feel better. They're thinking I have to fix it so I can win, or I can, or I can just go ahead and get this all over with. And everything will be, that's the other thing. They'll think everything will be better as long as I get whatever it is, a victory, or we have the number one profit share, or whatever. And unfortunately, the therapist is put in the situation to say like, well, I mean, obviously, if your business does better, that's great. Or if your family is more cohesive, that's wonderful, but it's more that you have to develop the emotional toolbox. If you do that, I'll consider that the victory. You won't, but I will. And I think everyone else around you will. So it's the type of circumstance where you still have to make sure the person gets what they want, as long as it's not a destructive goal. And you have to get what society wants. So I'll admit, you can't see me right now. And I'm not John Cena, but the point is, I have a huge smile on my face because, believe it or not, that's, for at least for many of us as people in the mental health field, that type of challenge can be so rewarding when you take it on and the person sees it through, because those types of insights do happen once in a while. They really do. They may take forever, or they may take a short while. Who knows? But when they happen, it is so awesome. I'm thinking back to myself a couple of times where I was able to see it, and it is really amazing. And the person is very thankful for the fact that, well, okay, I'll be honest. They're thankful that they got part of what they wanted in the first place, but they also hopefully have some level of insight to say, and you know what, I'll admit I'm a much more relaxed person. So from that standpoint, there's nothing wrong with type A. There's nothing wrong with singular goals that ultimately are going to be good, but you don't have to do it with the destruction of your soul. And that's just my take on it.
Well, I don't think you have to do anything with the destruction of your soul. And I think that we've mentioned on a number of occasions on this show that anything done to the extreme is going to be negative, even stuff that's in theory good. It all can be destructive if taken to an extreme. All things in moderation, including moderation. So the trick is finding that moderation and finding the balance. And that's something where mental health professionals, therapists, sociologists, whatever the case may be, can certainly help with finding that balance to ensure that you're not doing any one of the things to the detriment of the rest of your life. And I'm glad that you are able to recall, as I'm sure you were when describing it, you were able to recall particular instances where you had these moments with clients and with patients where they were having these breakthroughs, so they were figuring these things out for themselves, because those are the types of moments that I'm sure for professionals like you help keep you going and remind you why you do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we are going to take all of this and God help you, we're going to get the Shredder on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Shredder. I'm Dr. Issues.
And what are you a doctor of?
I'm a psychiatrist.
Ah, good to see that society still allows for quackery. All I knew that was a doctor met with Casey Jones, and he is less of an aimless bull. I want to know how.
You cut to the chase quickly.
I cut many things. You as well if you're of no use to me.
That was quite witty. I didn't expect that, but I know better than to think this is a laughing matter.
Wise, very wise. I have already been through hell. A mere chat with someone who deludes themselves into thinking they can help me is a minor inconvenience.
So you've already come to the conclusion that I can't help? We've only talked for a few seconds. How did you do that?
Depending on what you have heard about me, I have had plenty of time to study my subject of interest.
In a way, I'm flattered that I'm a subject of interest. So you know all about me, my practice, what I'd find concerning about your methods?
Yes, and that your flesh is as vulnerable as any other without training. Your disdain for violence that is counterbalanced with morbid fascination. You should fear me, and yet you position yourself as some sort of equal. Your stance is a position that I do not pretend to understand.
Then how do you relate to your foot soldiers?
I don't have to. They know their place. Anything less is dishonorable. So is avoiding my question.
I've been in this situation enough times to know that I won't be harmed again. But I'll also let you know for your own reference that a person that considers themselves under duress will often say exactly what they think their tormentor wants to hear. I'll do my best to respect confidentiality, but Casey Jones is a single-minded fighter that'll use any and all materials against his opponent to crush their skull, especially if they've done something that he considers wrong.
That is disappointing. I thought you would have more specific personal insights into his dealings with Splinter.
Splinter? I don't know him personally other than that you two have some sort of beef that you can't let go.
This is not beef. This is about honor. Purpose. He has none. He is a rat that should have expired long ago. If you claim to be a helper, then you will help me destroy him and everything associated with him.
But what if I helped you channel your rage into a focus so powerful that you won't need destruction in your life? The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting.
First thing you've said impressive this whole time, quoting Sun Tzu. But I also know that you are actually picking a section that we are well past. I do not fear the battle, and neither does he. He has turtles and a bizarre menagerie of overmatched, underwhelmed humans. I have aliens, mutants, and an army of devoted soldiers with vast technology and sorcery at my disposal. You are accurate that this is war. It is one that I must win at all cost.
Well, who declared it? Who made the first move?
If you must know, we reached a point of no return when Hamato Yoshi killed my brother. It was over a woman. Thankfully, she is dead now, as is Yoshi. But Splinter remains. Those turtles are an extension. His tree must be withered at the roots.
You got your revenge. Nagi's soul must be at peace, I guess. I mean, would he really have told you to go after a rat? A kingdom that has once been destroyed can never come back into being, nor the dead ever be brought back to life.
Ha 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 ha! Yes, that is it.
Look, I know you have magic and aliens, but...
No, you fool! I'm not trying to resurrect anyone. That is not an experience I would wish to be common knowledge anyway.
What?
Silence! Let me fill you in on what you have just helped me realize. I have lost too many times to repeat the same mistakes.
Oh, that's good insight! What are you doing?
These gauntlets are not for display purposes.
I didn't even threaten.
So in war, the way is to avoid what is strong and strike what is weak.
Okay, so I'm a vulnerability. You've tried hostages before, and that didn't work, so how is this any different?
The whole secret lies in confusing the enemy so that he cannot fathom our real intent.
Right now, I genuinely wish I didn't start quoting the Art of War with a ninja.
So I'm not technically a hostage. What am I then?
You are a psychiatrist. My psychiatrist. I am improving. My emotions are stable. I have made peace over the fall of my family. This is over a prolonged time. Some may say I am happy. My army loves me. This is told throughout the land. My allies think me soft. They leave. They think I'm weak. But no, I am more nimble. I offer peace to my enemy. Then, well, perhaps you should not know everything, but as my psychiatrist, you will be privy to how the last of Yoshi's echo fades.
And what of those who hear the echo and choose to repeat it?
That is for another session, Doctor. For your sake, pray you live to see it.
So he didn't kill you, but he's going to use your therapy sessions to make him a more effective killer, assassin, overall bad guy? Is that the gist of it?
Well, I would like to think that ultimately he will have those positive traits develop so that we will have the best possible outcome. And I am in no way stilted in my answers because I have a Foot Clan soldier trained on me at all times.
Okay, then. I'd say blink twice if you need help, but this is over Discord and I can't see you.
Well, I would like to say that I can assure you that I am totally safe right now and that Mr. Oroku Saki is an upstanding, I can't read that next line, citizen and will not have any harm come to me.
It's just the way you said that. And I can't read that next line.
In other words, I wanted to give the impression that I'm like in a, almost like in...
Dude, you're ruining the joke. Now you've ruined it.
Well, that's what I do with every joke. That's the point. I wouldn't be me if I didn't run a joke into the ground. No different than Shredder, using the same plans over and over. Whoops! I mean, upstanding citizen Oroku Saki, not doing the same mistake. Thank you.
See, I have the first 4 Ninja Turtles movies on Blu-ray. I started watching the first one last night after I had done some reading in preparation for this, and I stopped it about halfway through. So before the Turtles really got to figuring out, they didn't even battle the Foot Clan in April's store with the fire and everything. So that didn't even happen yet. But I did post some stuff on my Instagram story about, pictures. Like I took photos of screenshots from the movie. Well, wow. Pizza Dude's got 30 seconds. And that's stuff from like the beginning of the movie.
Gotcha.
Jose Canseco Bat, tell me you didn't pay money for this. Cricket. Nobody understands cricket. You got to know what a crumpet is to understand cricket. That movie is Ninja Kick the Damn Rabbit. Do something. I quote that movie on the reg. And then the second one where they were like, we can't show the turtles fighting with weapons. True story. I have a DVD copy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, with the DVD, the little display insert signed by Vanilla Ice. True story.
Okay. Why would you have that?
Because he came and gave a free concert at my college. And I was like, I have to have him sign this.
Wow. Okay.
And
good.
And I will not sell it until I get Kevin Nash to sign it.
Wow.
Because somebody out there is willing to pay money for a Ninja Turtles 2 DVD signed by Vanilla Ice and Kevin Nash. Somebody will give me at least like $50 for that. I'm certain of it. I just have to meet Kevin Nash and have him sign it.
Whatever you do, just make sure, he doesn't have to walk to you without blowing a quad.
I was waiting. I will make sure we are on the same level of ground and that he doesn't have to really move his knees at all. We could go on and on about this, but alas, it is time for the end of the show. So our next episode's coming up. We've got the Mental Health Avengers Age of Access Part 2 with our friends over at Guardians, Popcorn Psychology, PopPsych 101, and Freudian Sips. So we've got that. And then Dick Grayson, once again, Ariel is requesting a Bat Family member. I think we've got Dick Grayson and then Azrael. And then she said she's going to give us a break on the Bat Family stuff. I don't know how true that is. I'll wait until I get her next pick for the episode. She'll be like, you know what? Do Babs Gordon, or somebody like that. And then Laura Kinney, X-23. So that one should be a really interesting one. I love X-23 as a character. I think she's absolutely fascinating. And then maybe one of these days we'll get to Honey Badger. Ooh. So just again, as a reminder, we mentioned at the top of the show, podchaser.com is continuing to do their reviews for good. So if you go to podchaser.com and you leave us a review, Podchaser will donate 25 cents to Meals on Wheels COVID-19 Relief Fund. And if we respond, which we absolutely will, they will double that. So please go to podchaser.com, leave us a review, and review your other favorite podcasts. It's not just us. They will do this for any and all podcasts. They just ask that it is at least 20 characters and that it's not a copy and paste job. So as long as it is unique, individualized reviews for each of the shows, they will donate the money and it will go to help folks in need. I did mention at the top of the show, we did make a couple of references to Because Comics. We do have the designs in, and we will be posting them on our TeePublic site shortly, where you can buy merch with our second design. And we actually have two color schemes on it. And the amazingly talented Emily is the graphic design artist. She is the daughter of Kate, the host of Ignorance is Bliss. And today is Emily's birthday, by the way. So just a fun little shout out there, at least the day that we're recording this. So anyway, all of this to say that if you go to teepublic.com, by the end of the month, there will be new designs for merch that you can buy. You can still also buy merch with our logo on it as usual. And you can also go to patreon.com/capesinthecouch and subscribe and financially support the show, even though if you sign up right now, we're not going to take your money because we're not charging for the month of April, and we probably won't charge for the month of May to let you keep some of more of your money that we all kind of need in this time of economic uncertainty. But we are continuing to put out the Patreon exclusive content. So I'm basically telling you, sign up for Patreon, and it's basically not going to cost you anything, except for maybe like the first month. I think they automatically charge you when you sign up, but then after that, I mean, we're not going to charge you for the month of May. So it's a little plug there. Sign up, join our Patreon, and get free stuff for now. And you can find us basically everywhere on social media at Capes on the Couch. Our email address is capesonthecouch@gmail.com, and our website is capesonthecouch.live or capesonthecouch.com. So please join us and interact with us. We'd love to hear from our fans. We've got a Discord. If you're interested, tinyurl.com/capes Discord, capital C and capital D. And you go there and interact with us. And you can listen to us as we record these things live, like Ruby is doing right now. Hey, Ruby. So that's going to do it for this episode. Doc, you got anything you want to add before we leave?
Actually, I do. I want to put out a public service announcement. Too much sake will definitely mean that you won't be able to put your best foot forward, and it'll leave your mind pretty much shredded and splintered.
I think that's the worst one you've done yet.
Thank you. Keep the compliments coming, people.
For Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.